For as long as Silicon Valley has existed, there has been a hierarchy. You had the engineers at the top, the builders.
Right, the people who actually spoke the language of the machines.
And then way down at the bottom, you had the idea guys.
The person at the party is like, I have $1 million app idea. I just need a tech nerd to build it.
And for, 30 years, that tech nerd held all of the cards? If you couldn't wrestle with syntax and semicolons, your idea was basically worthless.
But I think we're looking at a source today that suggests that whole hierarchy is flipping. The idea guy might just be about to have the last laugh.
It's a massive shift.
It's huge.
Yeah.
We're talking about a lead scraper sauce with real-time government APIs, a dashboard that has AI summarization built right in.
All built in roughly 15 minutes.
Without writing a single line of manual code. It is, and this isn't an exaggeration, the death of the six-figure budget.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are unpacking a guide by Maxon called Build a Sauce in 15 Minutes, the 2026 No-Code AI Blueprint.
Quite a title.
It is. I have to be honest, when I first saw that, I kind of rolled my eyes.
It sounds like total clickbait.
It does, but then I looked at the actual stack he's using, this new Google trio, Gemini, Stitch, and Antigravity.
And the methodology feels different.
It's a system. It's not just make me an app.
Exactly. We're not exploring a faster way to code. We're exploring the shift from being a coder to being a director of systems.
That's the core theme.
Yeah. It's no longer about knowing how to mix the concrete. It's about knowing exactly where the building is supposed to stand.
That is a bold claim. I want to test it. I want to see if this is, actual engineering or if it's just a toy. So how are we breaking this down?
Okay, let's treat it like a real engineering sprint. First, we have to understand the tools, the employees, because they are not just chatbots.
We need to look at Gemini, Stitch, and Antigravity.
Then we'll walk through the build itself, phase by phase. So strategy, then design, then the actual code generation.
And the data. We have to talk about the data.
Oh, crucially, we'll look at the government APIs and that secret sauce of AI summarization. And then we have to do a reality check.
Good.
Because I don't care what the title says, things always break. We need to talk about what happens when the AI hallucinates and just leaves you with a blank screen.
I am glad you mentioned that. I'm skeptical that a director of systems can really fix a broken Python dependency without, knowing Python.
Fair enough.
But let's start with that mindset, clarity of outcome. That's the phrase the author uses. It sounds great, but what does it actually mean to replace coding with clarity?
It means that execution is now a commodity. It's cheap. In the past, you could have a fuzzy idea, hire a team, and they would figure it out.
Right.
Now, since the AI is doing the building, you have to be the architect. And Anna introduces this Google triad that basically replaces a whole software team.
Okay, let's unpack the team then. Who are we hiring?
First up is Gemini. And in this workflow, Gemini isn't just a chatbot, it's your product manager. It's the strategist. Then you have Stitch. That's your UI UX master, the designer. And finally, you have the heavy lifter, Antigravity.
Antigravity is the one that really caught my eye. The guide calls it an agentic IDE. We should probably pause on that for a second.
Yeah, that's jargon.
Agentic IDE. So IDE is an integrated development environment. It's the text editor coders use. But agentic, how is that different from me just pasting a prompt into ChatGPT?
That is the crucial distinction. If you use ChatGPT, it just gives you text. You have to copy the text, switch windows, paste it in a file, try to run it, see an error, copy the error. It's just this tedious loop.
The copy-paste loop, yeah.
Right. An agentic IDE like Antigravity has hands. It lives inside your computer's terminal.
So it has permission to execute commands.
Yes. It installs dependencies, runs browser tests. It's not suggesting code. It is actively manipulating your machine's environment.
So it's less like a chatbot and more like a remote junior developer who has control of my keyboard.
Precisely. It's a text-to-software converter, not a text-to-text converter.
That sounds incredibly powerful, but also a little unnerving.
It can be.
Couldn't I accidentally tell it to, delete my hard drive?
Theoretically, yes. Which brings us right back to that director of systems role.
Yeah.
The human isn't obsolete. You're the pilot. If you give vague instructions to a human developer, they'll ask you questions. If you give vague instructions to an agent, it just guesses.
And AI guesses can be very confident and very wrong.
Exactly. So the human's job becomes high context direction and setting guardrails.
Which is a perfect segue to phase 1, strategy. The source material makes a huge deal about the product requirements document, the PRD.
Hallucinated code is the term he uses.
Mhm.
If you skip the PRD, you're basically pouring concrete without any blueprints. You'll get a wall, but it might be blocking the front door.
So the process starts with Gemini.
Yep, you don't start by coding. You start by writing a really structured prompt to Gemini to define the whole product.
And we're not just talking, I want a scraper.
Yeah,
The guide lists specifics. User personas. Who's this actually for?
the happy path, which is the main user flow.
And interestingly, adherence to Material Design 3. Why is that specific design standard so important here? Why not just say, make it look cool?
Because cool is subjective, and AI really struggles with subjectivity.
Right.
Material Design 3 is Google's design language. It has strict rules: spacing, typography, color. By forcing the AI to use that standard, you're putting bumpers on the bowling lane.
You're constraining it, which makes the output better.
Exactly. You reduce the variables.
Now, there was a pro tip in this phase that I liked. The author suggests asking Gemini for API recommendations at the very start.
Yes, this is the director of systems mindset in action. Instead of figuring out later how to get the data, you ask the strategist Gemini to research federal databases and API docs right up front.
So you walk out of phase 1 not with code, but with this massive detailed document.
A document that describes exactly what success looks like.
So is the role of the human obsolete?
Now, the human becomes the pilot. Vague instructions equal vague software.
Okay, we have our blueprint. Phase 2 is design. We move from Gemini to Stitch. Now, I've seen AI image generators. They make beautiful, surreal art. That's not what we want for a software interface, is it?
No, and that's the trap. You do not want pretty art. You want functional wireframes. The guide talks about using blueprint mode in Stitch.
So it's low fidelity.
Very low fidelity, and it strictly follows those material design rules we just established.
And you have to set the aspect ratio to web, 16.9.
Right, and here's the step that saves you a ton of money.
Yeah.
You can click through the generated screens.
So Stitch creates editable screens like login, dashboard, a settings page.
Yep, and you test the logic visually. If a filter button is in a weird spot, you tell the AI to move it now before a single line of code exists.
Because moving a pixel in a design tool is basically free. Moving a component in a React code base can break 20 other things.
Exactly. It creates a visual boundary for the AI. When we get to the coding phase, the AI isn't guessing what the dashboard should look like. It's just translating the picture into code.
So why is visual prototyping so much cheaper than coding?
It creates a visual boundary for the AI, which prevents logic errors later on.
Which brings us to the main event, phase 3, the front-end build. This is where we bring in Antigravity. The author calls this the moment of wonder.
It really is. You take that folder you exported from Stitcher Design and you just drop it into Antigravity.
And then you paste in that big PRD from step 1.
Right. And Antigravity acts as your senior front-end engineer. It reads the design, it reads the requirements, and it just starts working. It creates the React app, it sets up the routing.
So login goes to the login page, dashboard to the dashboard.
It installs the dependencies. This is that agentic nature we talked about. It's literally running npm install. It's setting up the whole file structure.
I have to admit, this is where I usually get skeptical. I've played with these tools, and I still wrestle with prompt drift myself. Sometimes the AI just forgets the design system halfway through.
That's a very real vulnerability. The guide actually mentions this. You have to be explicit. You have to keep reminding it. Material Design 3, MUI standards. You are the guardrails.
Okay.
But the amazing part is, once it builds that first version, it launches a local server. You could open your browser and see the app running on your machine.
But what happens when you open it and it's just a blank page or there's a huge error message? Because that definitely happens.
It does. And in the old days, you Google the error code and scroll through Stack Overflow for an hour. Now, you just screenshot the error, you feed the image back to Antigravity, and you say, fix this, and it iterates.
What happens when that first version is blank or broken?
You screenshot the error, feed it back to the agent, and it iterates.
Okay, so we have a front end. It looks like an app, but for now, it's just a Hollywood set, right? That's a facade.
Yeah, if you refresh the page, everything disappears. We need to talk about phases 4 and 5 refining and the back end.
Refining is that tight loop you mentioned.
Exactly. Ask, review, refine. Add a sidebar for project details. The agent codes it, you check it. But the back end, that's the brain of the operation.
The guide recommends Supabase here, which is basically a wrapper for Postgres. Why use that instead of just, say, local files for a simple project?
Because if you want this to be a real product, it needs persistence. It has to remember users. It needs to store data securely. Using Supabase gets you a production-grade database from day one.
And there's a security note here that I think is critical. The AI knows to put API keys in a .env file.
Yes, this is a classic rookie mistake, to hard-code your secret keys into the code itself where anyone can see them.
Right.
The AI is smart enough to abstract those into an environment file, which keeps the app secure.
So the workflow is interesting. Antigravity generates the SQL query, the database code, and you, the human, copy that into Supabase to run it.
Right. It'll create tables for user profiles, for saved opportunities, whatever you need. Then Antigravity builds a Python server using Flask or FastAPI to handle the logic.
So now you have a front end talking to a back end, which talks to a database.
That is a full-stack application.
So why use Supabase instead of just local files?
Can make it a real product that persists data and remembers users.
It's the classic stack, just built in minutes. Okay, now let's get to the good stuff. Phase 6, the secret sauce. We're building a lead scraper. We need data.
We have to connect this beautiful shell to the real world. The guide details 3 specific APIs. First, the GovCon API for scraping federal contracts.
Okay.
Second, USA Spending, which is a huge public database of government expenditure.
Right.
And third, a news API to get articles about companies.
And the integration process is just giving the documentation to the AI.
That's the director of systems skill again. You don't need to know how to write the request. You copy the URL for the API documentation, paste it in the prompt, and say, integrate this.
When a user searches for construction, query this API.
And store the results in Supabase.
Exactly. But just listing contracts is kind of boring. Everyone does that. The guide mentions a secret sauce around AI summarization.
This is where the value add explodes. Federal contracts are so dense, they're 20, 50, 100 pages of bureaucratic legalese.
Unreadable.
Completely.
Yeah.
The secret sauce is plugging in a summarization layer. The app doesn't just fetch the contract, it feeds the text to an AI model, which turns it into a 3-sentence summary.
So the user doesn't see solicitation number 594-B.
No, they see Department of Defense is looking for AI cybersecurity vendors, budget $5 million, due next Friday.
You're transforming raw data into insight.
That is what people pay for.
So what is the ultimate value add here?
Transforming raw data into insight via the AI summarization layer.
So we've built the strategy, the design, the code, the database, the APIs. Now for the moment of truth. The test. The guide calls it the Intelligence Command Center test.
Right. You have to walk through the user journey. You search for artificial intelligence defense contracts. You see live results pop up. You click Save on one of them.
And when you go to your Save tab, it should be there.
Which proves the database connection works. Then you search for a company, say SpaceX. The news API fires, pulling recent articles.
And if all those chains hold together,
Search to API to backend to database to front end, you have a shipping product.
it sounds incredible. But we did promise a reality check.
We did.
Segment G in our outline is literally the honest reality check. I want to slow down here because if I go home and try this, it is not going to be flawless.
It won't be. Not at all. And is very honest about this. The friction is real, syntax breaks, buttons look off, APIs refuse to connect because of some minor version mismatch.
The guide mentions you might have to adjust spacing for the 3rd time or guide the system through a logic error. It requires patience.
It requires a willingness to iterate. You aren't typing the code, but you are debugging the logic. You have to look at the screen and say, that's wrong, and then explain why it's wrong to the agent.
But let's look at the trade-off, even with that friction, with those errors.
It is still 10 to 20 times faster than the old way.
The traditional method.
Right. With the old way, you're talking about a team of 3 to 5 developers, a burn rate of $150,000, 3 to 6 months before you even see a working product.
And here, you're doing it alone, potentially in a weekend, for the cost of a few API subscriptions.
That is the death of the developer aspect. Not that code is going away, but the cost of code is collapsing to near zero. The barrier is no longer capital.
It's patience.
So what is the only barrier left?
Patience and the willingness to iterate through small errors.
So if we step back, look at the big picture. What does this mean for the person listening right now? The person curious about the future of work?
I think it means we're moving from a world of, can I code this, to a world of, do I know what I want to build?
The skill set of the future is clarity.
Clarity is the new coding.
Precisely. The flow we just described, strategy with Gemini, design with Stitch, build with Antigravity, it's a workflow that rewards the person who can think clearly about systems.
If you can define the PRD, if you can visualize the outcome,
You can build tools that used to require a venture-backed startup.
It's incredibly empowering, but also a little daunting. The responsibility is entirely on you. There's no tech guy to blame if the vision is blurry.
That's the trade-off. You have infinite leverage, but you also have total accountability.
So here's a challenge for our listeners. Max Ann suggests trying to define a PRD this weekend, even if you don't build the app.
Just sit down with Gemini and practice the skill of defining a product with that kind of rigor. I think that's a fantastic exercise.
Yeah.
Because even if you never run the code, just learning to think in happy paths and user personas and API integrations makes you a better thinker, period.
And who knows, you might just accidentally build the next big thing in your spare time.
Stranger things have happened.
This has been a fascinating deep dive. A huge thanks to Max Ann for the source material. And remember, clarity is your superpower. Thanks for listening.
See you next time.